Well, not quite. All right. Welcome to the Tuesday Night Touchdown. Again, we're here back here with Jordan and Danny. We got a big few day of sports past couple of nights. Yeah, so we'll hop right into it. Obviously, last night was the college basketball championship game, and I thought it was a pretty good game between Texas Tech and Virginia. What about you, Jordan?
Man, my thoughts on the game last night was it was basically neck and neck. I mean, they almost went into halftime tied before a huge shot was hit, 3-pointer before the half. I mean, and then it really looked like Virginia had control of the game.
They really controlled tempo really well through most of that game.
Definitely. I mean, it was an 8 or 10 point game. Seemed like for at least 15 minutes in the second half. So Tech started to get some momentum. I think no matter if you wanted to see Tech in it, if you want to see UVA, whatever, the the good part about it was a good basketball game. It was a great championship game. It wasn't a blowout, so I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of people, they were like, before the game started, they were kind of talking about, oh, this isn't like a marquee matchup. It's not like some like two big name schools. Obviously, Texas Tech, they've never won. They never been there before. They never been to the Final Four before. Actually, fun fact about Texas Tech: the only NCAA sport they've won a team championship in is women's basketball in the '80s. So they haven't won a team sport in
Really?
the last time
That's
they
interesting.
yeah last the only team sport they've won is women's basketball, and that was like 40 years ago. So they haven't won anything along that. So I was really pulling for them. To kind of get back to my point though, I know a lot of people were talking like, oh, like this is gonna be like a defensive matchup because obviously like Virginia, they're known for like a defensive scheme team, and then Texas Tech, they're known for just like lockdown defenders. Obviously, they held
Real
yeah,
long.
real long team. I think their shortest guy in their starting five is like 6'5", 6'6". So they got some really tall guys in their team. Obviously they held Michigan to 44, which is ridiculous. They held Michigan State to 51. So they're a really talented defensive team. I thought, I mean, through the first 10 minutes of the game, it kind of seemed like it was going to play out how people were selling it and complaining about to be. I know Max Kellerman tweeted, he was like, oh, am I not supposed to complain about this because they're not shooting a bunch of threes and stuff? And I mean, it kind of seemed like it was going to be like a drag out, low scoring game. But I thought, especially in that second half, like that last like 8 minutes or so, I thought the offense really picked up. And I think it's probably a class. It's not quite on the Villanova, North Carolina game where
Oh no,
yeah
absolutely not. That was
that game will probably be the second best, for sure, top five. I think it has the argument to be the second best championship game of all time. Obviously, the first one would be Wilt Chamberlain when his team went into triple overtime in the championship game. But obviously, none of us. I mean, at least me and you, we weren't alive for that. But I mean, what did you enjoy the game?
I did enjoy the game. Like you said, the first, I mean, man, like 4 or 5 minutes into the game, it was 2-2.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Texas Tech
uh,
started off the game 1 for 15.
yeah,
That's nuts.
yeah, really defensive game, especially to start out with. But all in all, I mean, hey, it was a good game. Big shots at the end. I really don't have much complaints. I mean, at the end, the
I have
refs had to make some tough calls.
Yeah, the Virginia has had the refs on their side this whole tournament. I'll leave it at that. But they've got lucky
Yeah,
breaks in all of their last three games.
there wasn't. I will say this about the refs. The reason why I didn't bring the refs up in the beginning, because of course that is a topic at hand, because they did make some tough calls. There
Yeah,
wasn't a call. There wasn't a call they made
there wasn't a
that
call
lost
that. Yeah,
players.
exactly. There wasn't like an egregious call that was like this is
Yeah,
why they lost. And honestly, if you're Tech, you can't even put it on the refs because, well, specifically Jarrett Culver, they had some pretty boneheaded plays there at the end of the game where if they didn't do certain
absolutely.
things. I mean, Jarrett Culver, two possessions in a row. Obviously, on the defensive end, he left DeAndre Hunter on the 3-pointer to come over, play help defense on Ty
Yeah.
Jerome, and that obviously that got DeAndre Hunter open for the game tying three. And then
Yeah.
can you explain for me the shot he took with 10 seconds left in the game?
I wish I could, because the great layup spin with the left hand that he did prior to that,
Yeah,
lead.
and yeah, he had the
It was
great.
amazing.
It was it was amazing.
It was amazing. It was a great play, and it was really set up the same way. So the reason why he took that was, besides the fact that he's a great player, great driver, but he's a good player. That's a one-on-one. There wasn't any
Yep.
help in the paint. That was the same.
Oh.
If you go back and watch that replay, when he took that open three, there was no one in the paint. It was a one-on-one. It was one-on-one. Now the guy was backed off of 4 or 5 feet. So yeah, if you needed to take a three.
I mean, the thing is, it wasn't even like an easy three though. He was still kind of like off balance when he took it.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and that's why I say that's a good three if you need a three. If you
Yeah.
don't need a three, no, you take that back to the rim like you did before, because he had such an easy layup out of it. I mean, the inside was if this is coaching philosophy. Some people will say it's wrong. Some people will say it's right. It all comes to your knowledge, your experience, and kind of your game. But if you're a good, strong, athletic guard in college basketball, and there's nobody in the paint, you bet, and you're not wide open, you take it to the paint. You take it to the paint.
Yeah. Well, especially in that situation too. All you needed to do is draw the foul. All you need, if he makes one free throw, that's all he needs. I mean, obviously you want to bleed the clock a little bit, so when you get fouled, they don't have another chance to respond, because if you make one, you're only up by one. But still, all he needed to do was make one free throw, and he jacked up some. He took 2 seconds off the clock to begin with. I don't know what they were thinking. And then obviously in overtime, Virginia just ran away with it. So
yeah, I mean the best way to describe that was, and I hate to say it because he played great.
He put the team on his back the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game.
Absolutely, and even the game prior.
Yeah, he hit that big three. Yeah.
Yep, but I mean that's just classic. That's classic. Trying to play hero ball when you, and I'm not saying playing hero ball is in. Not playing hero ball is you should have passed it. Playing hero ball is in you're taking the tough ESPN poster shot when you can go in and just get that layup.
He literally thought he was out in his driveway when you're like 15 years old and you're counting down 10, 9, 8, 7. Yeah, and he was like, all right, I'm pulling it. I'm like, you don't need, like, he shot that and I was like, what the hell was that? Why would you take that shot?
And a lot, and what the point of veteran presence, one of the big things of veteran presence on a team. I'm not saying Tech necessarily lacks it, but one of the things about veteran presence on the team is they keep you level when the pressure's up. Because when the pressure's up, common sense goes out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could see it like when Chris Webber, probably the best player in the country on the Fab Five, called a timeout.
Yep.
Dude, you've never done that in your life.
You're
the best player right now, and you call time, that pressure, common sense goes out the window. And that's what happened to him.
I feel like being the best player too, I feel like that makes common sense go even more out the window, because it's kind of like that like Russell Westbrook effect, where like obviously he knows he's the best player on the team. Well, I mean, debatable now. Paul George is there, but for the sake of my point, players, when they think they're the best player on the team and they're in these pressure situations, they're like, oh well, I need to make the big play, so they go out and try to force it. And the thing was, like, obviously any bucket at that point in the game would have been a big play. But he was going for like the home run, like dagger three, and they didn't need a home run dagger three. All they needed was a layup or a free throw. That's all they needed to get. And I think the reason why Virginia has won the championship is not because they're the most talented team. They're out of all those three. Again, the Purdue game, the Auburn game, and the Texas Tech championship game. They were the only team not to make mental errors down the stretch that cost them the game. Every other team, all those other teams they beat, they should have. Purdue should have won. Auburn should have won. Texas Tech, they probably should have won too. But the common denominator between all three of those teams is Virginia is a more disciplined team. They played smarter, and they didn't make mental errors while the other three teams did.
Yep, that's a really, really good point. Good point. And truly, yeah. I mean, you could say a lot of people, again, bringing it up, a lot of people say, oh, the ref this, the ref that. But, I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, it's mental errors. And nobody took you out of the game. You took you out of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, like, in the Auburn game, people are like, oh, like, what? Like, you don't call that foul in that situation. And I'm like, well, you call that foul. Like, it's a foul. A foul's a foul, no matter if there's 10 minutes on the clock or there's a second on the clock.
Yeah.
And obviously his body got into the shooter, so that's a foul. So, like, it was the right call to make, and Auburn lost because of a mental error. Like, there was no guarantee that Kyle Guy was going to make that shot. So Auburn lost because their player made that mental error, And then
Yep.
Texas Tech lost because Jarrett Culver made 2 crucial mental errors down the stretch. And I mean, I don't know if you can chalk this up as a mental error, but I mean, missing a free throw too from Ryan Klein, who's an excellent free throw shooter. He missed a free throw
Yeah.
shooter that would have put them up by 4. They do that, or no, put them up by 3, I think. If he does that, they're up by 3. Virginia needs a 3 to tie the game and send it to overtime. Obviously, you don't know how that's going to go, but all these teams, Virginia hit their free throws at the end of the games. Obviously, Kyle Guy had to make all three of those free throws to win the game. They had to not make mental errors. So they did all. Obviously, being the most talented team, that propels you into the championships, but also being the most disciplined team too.
Yep. Yeah, really good point. And again, going back to when it comes to discipline and what's going on in your mental, and I harp this because when I was younger, I thought this was literally a term that old people made up for no reason. Veteran presence. Having guys that have been in that situation before. When I was younger, I was like, veteran presence? No.
Yeah, it's like if I got the talent, I got the talent. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. Not at all. I mean, the main players on the court, you could say Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, and
DeAndre Hunter.
DeAndre Hunter and I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Mamadou Diakite. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was gonna, but that's 3 juniors.
I mean, then you look at Tech too. That Matt Mooney, he's a senior. Jarrett Culver, I believe he's a junior. Tariq Owens, he's a grad senior. So like both those teams are loaded with veteran presence.
And exactly, and so when you get to those final moments, it's so funny, but it's like who's gonna fold? You've been playing away this entire game for 35 minutes, but the last 5 minutes, it's ISO. It's playing like
yep.
No,
you got to stick to your system when the pressure gets ramped up, and I think
even if the crowd's getting amped up. You know how much the game needs. You see the clock lowering. The clock's moving fast, and you see it, and that's when you take a 3, like Culver did.
Yep.
You gotta stick to it.
And I think obviously Texas Tech, they made the mental errors on the stretch, but I think prior to that game, they were one of the teams that made one of the least mental errors in their tournament run up to the championship game. And I think that's what marks all those teams who made it to the Final Four. You look at Michigan State; they played really well throughout the tournament. They just got shut down by Texas Tech in that game. Obviously, Virginia is the most disciplined team, but you look at like teams like Auburn and like all that team. They played really well together. Like they didn't make mental errors and stuff, obviously, until they did. And once they started making mental errors, then they lost. So it's about those teams who can stay disciplined throughout as the pressure gets ramped up. Because obviously, the pressure is high in the round of 64, but every single round you advance, the pressure is going to get even more and more because you feel what's on the line more and more. You feel the closer you get to achieving that ultimate goal, the more the pressure starts to build on you. So I feel like those teams that can weather the storm, keep the right state of mind, and really focus on the systems that got them to the place they're at, those are the teams that win championships.
Yep, really good point.
That's why you don't really see these freshman-laden teams win too many championships. Like you would expect the team with all the 5-star recruits and all the one-and-done players who are going to go on to be NBA stars. You expect them to be the teams who are going off and winning championships. But I mean, if you just look at the results historically, that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly.
To kind of move on though, although it does serve to be a really good segue into our next topic. Speaking of mental state of mind, I feel like obviously Virginia, I think this is going to make for a great 30 for 30 documentary a few years down the road from now. Obviously, Virginia last year, they were the first 1 seed to ever lose to 16. This year, they come back, win the national championship. What do you think, speaking of state of mind, what do you think that speaks to a team's state of mind? What do you think that just speaks to basketball historically? Because I don't think we've ever seen something like this happen before. We've never seen a team lose to 16. We never seen a 1 seed lose to a 16 before. And then obviously you wouldn't expect that team to have the mental fortitude to come back. So what do you think this means for basketball historians down the road? Like, how historical of a moment do you think this is?
I think it's big, and I think this kind of I don't want to beat a dead horse like we've done. We did like the last week's show. But again, you talk about having older guys, you talk about having programs that isn't just an NBA factory.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, and of course, who knows what's going to happen, but this is my opinion. You will never see a Kentucky team or a Duke team or a UNC team lose in the first round and then come back the next year. And because, I mean, it's these guys. I mean, we're all passionate. We all remember stuff. And those guys, I mean, probably a big part of it was they remembered how that exit went.
Yep.
And anytime you play the team sport and you make it to a playoff or some type of
and you lose,
some type of next level, and you lose, what does the coach always say? He always says, "Remember this."
Yep.
He always says, "Remember this." And depending on what guys you have as your leaders, you remember it. You truly, and Virginia actually just didn't say, "Oh, remember this, remember, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna be back next year, blah blah blah," like everybody else says. They did it. They went to the off season. They worked, and when the moment came back to them, they
seized the moment. Yeah, and I don't think this is something we'll ever see again, because I don't. Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's in 81 years we've seen a 16 seed beat a 1. Obviously, the tournament has expanded since when it first started, so it's not quite 81 years. But since the start of the tournament, we haven't seen a number 1 seed lose to the bottom ranked seed, and that was the first time that ever happened. So I feel like, for one, that's very unlikely. For two, for that team to come back the next year, earn another number 1 seed, come back and win the whole tournament, I think that really speaks volumes to just basketball history. I think that's going to be something we look back at and be like we're going to know the events that transpired before the championship. And I think that's going to really make this championship stand out in particular as held to other ones. Because if you look back, obviously, you remember the ones that really stand out. You remember the Villanova one, the first one they won because of the Jenkins 3 to win the game. And obviously UNC had just hit a crazy acrobatic 3 that we thought won the game the play before that.
Yeah.
And then we remember the UConn one with Kemba Walker because they went on an 11-game winning streak to end the season. So we remember that. We remember the Mario Chalmers Derrick Rose finals in 2005, I believe, because Mario Chalmers obviously hit the 3-pointer to tie the game and send the game into overtime at the buzzer, and the Kansas would go on to beat Derrick Rose's Memphis team. So I think those championships, those are the ones that really stand out, and I think this one is really similar to those ones. And even in another way, this championship this year was the first NCAA championship game to go into overtime since the Mario Chalmers Derrick Rose Memphis game. So I thought that was really cool. I think this game has a lot of historical impact. I think it'll stand out too because it has historical implications for the team that lost. It was Texas Tech, first time ever being there. And I mean, who knows if Texas Tech's ever going to be back there again. So I feel like these kind of moments in history, they're really fleeting. You're in the moment and then you're out of it. And then all you have to look back on is just the historical records of what happened. You're never going to be in that moment ever again in your life. And we're never going to experience that again in our life. So I think it's going to be a unique situation that we've never really had in basketball before. And I think that'll be something really cool to look on upon. So I'm really happy with just how everything turned out. Like I said it before, but I'm glad we didn't get another Duke, North Carolina part 14, whatever. And like you said, not to be a dead horse, but I think it's incredible. Coach Calipari only has 1 championship.
Really?
Yeah, he's only won one NCAA championship.
Wow.
You look at these guys who you think of them as these basketball savants and guys who've won tons of championships. I mean, obviously Coach K, he's won a lot. But if you look at the other guys, they haven't won too many. Coming through 2003 when Jim Boeheim and Roy Williams played each other. Obviously Roy Williams now at North Carolina, he was coaching Kansas at the time in 2003. But obviously his Kansas team and Jim Boeheim's Syracuse team, they met up in that year. And when they played each other, both those coaches who are now on legendary status, they're both surefire Hall of Famers in college basketball. Both those two coaches, they were playing for their first national championship. And since then, Jim Boeheim's only won 1, and he's the second most winning coach in college basketball history. But you're really in the moment in these things, and it's so rare for for teams to win a championship. And for it to happen like in the circumstances that Virginia did it in, with the year before, with how tough the loss was, I think that really changes the dynamic of the way people will look at this championship.
Yeah, I definitely agree. All good points. All good points. And yeah, as for the original question you asked, I couldn't. The chances of a team being so good as a 1 seed, losing to the 16th, and then coming back the next year and winning it all, man, if it happens, it definitely won't be. It won't be in our lifetime, because I feel like that's once in a century type of accomplishment.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy just to even think about that happened, because I remember before every tournament, I would like ask, I was like, is this the year it's gonna happen? Like, is a one gonna lose to 16? And I'd be like, nah. And like when you're making your brackets and everything, and you always go down and you just like you pick the one, like that's like the one game you don't like think about at all. Because then like 15s beat 2s, like that happens like more often than you think. But you go through your bracket, you're like, all right. So I mean, it's kind of you wouldn't really expect it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Definitely destroys brackets.
Speaking of your bracket though, I gotta give you a shout out. So you wanna shout your own bracket out? I was pretty amazed by how it went.
So I predicted 98.9% of the games correct, and I took my finals. So I made 3 brackets. So I'm not gonna lie and say I only made one. So I made 3 brackets. I had LSU winning one, I had Duke winning one, and then I had Virginia winning one.
Yeah.
I had Virginia playing Michigan State, so I almost even predicted the actual matchup. But yeah, I did predict Virginia to win on one of my brackets and got almost 99% of the games correct on that. So yeah.
What game? I mean, obviously you probably got. Were there any like that stood out that you got wrong? Where you're like, oh man, like I should have picked the other way.
Now that I think about it, are you asking like ones that like I kind of regret picking?
Yeah, like ones where you look back and you're like, why did I pick that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. For some reason, I don't know, I kind of went on a limb. This was my 3rd bracket, so I was like, what the heck? I predicted Houston getting to the Elite 8.
I picked Houston going pretty far too, actually, in mine.
And they almost made it. They almost beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
So I kind of questioned that one. Other than that, the rest of them were pretty black and white. I take that back. I did pick UCF beating Duke. I don't know why I did that. So they only lost by 1.
Yeah. They should have won that game, honestly. The funny thing about brackets too is I feel like it's always that last bracket you make where you're just kind of like, screw it, I'm just gonna make one more bracket, and that's the bracket that like does the best every single time. Like that bracket you sit down and you like do research on each team. You like look at the matchups and stuff. You like take 2 hours to like really sit down and like flesh it all out. That bracket always does. Like it's always like that's like your like middle or to worst bracket, and that like top tier bracket you make is like you just kind of threw everything together.
And that bracket that I did do all the digging on and wanted to do it, I got 27% of the games.
Jeez.
And my championship was LSU versus North Carolina. So that tells you that.
Yeah, I had only made one bracket this year. It wasn't that. I think I got like 78% right. It wasn't that good, to be honest. I picked Texas Tech to go all the way, but that was it.
Did you?
Yeah, no, I picked them to go to the Final Four. I had Duke UNC, but I picked Duke to beat Texas Tech in the Final Four.
But you predicted Tech to go to the Final Four?
Yeah, I predicted Tech to go to that. You know what's funny? Tech was the only team I picked right to go to the Final Four. I picked Tech, Purdue, North Carolina, and Duke.
But okay, I guess you could say Auburn. I would say Tech. If you asked me who would go to the Final Four out of Auburn and Tech, I would have picked Auburn. So to me, Tech was the most unlikely team to be in the.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched a few Tech games this year, just like kind of bored, and like I heard they were like good teams, so like I just kind of like watched a few games. I saw like they were like a really defensive team. They really good in the Big 12, unseeded Kansas. So I was like, all right, I'll give them a shot. I'll pick them through. Plus, they were kind of in a weaker region too. I like their matchups against like Gonzaga and Michigan. It's like the 1 and 2 seed in that region, Gonzaga and Michigan. Obviously, like I didn't really buy into them. Obviously, I don't buy Gonzaga ever. And I always bought Virginia. Like the past 2 years, I always like, all right, this is gonna be Virginia's year. This is gonna be Virginia's year, and I always pick them having like at least to the Elite Eight, and they always flame out and don't go far. So I was like, all right, this year I'm not rolling with Virginia, and of course they win the championship this year.
Yeah, right.
Nah, but I mean, I think not to go off on a tangent, but definitely my best bracket was freshman year when I was 30 for 30 through the first 30 games in that bracket. I got the last 2 of the first round wrong.
Oh man, I got 26 games right.
Damn.
And then Michigan hits 8 threes.
Oh, yo, I remember. Were we FaceTime when we watched that?
Yes,
that was insane, bro.
I was like, there's absolutely no way. And they shot one. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. And then they go to make 6 more in a row, and I'm sitting here like, this is like a video of 2K.
Dude, the thing is though, Cincinnati was hidden too. Like they were both hidden. Like that game was nuts. It was like I think it was like 98-91 or something in like a first round college game.
Yeah. Wow.
You know what that reminds me? You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of, obviously no one knows what we're gonna be talking about here, but it reminds me of when we were at the teen center together in like 8th grade or something. And we went into like triple overtime, and like Melo was just like knocking down threes in like 2K9. We had the teen center like open an extra 35 minutes after closing time just so we could finish our game.
The inning was so anticlimactic. Like,
it really was. No, it was Nene. It was I think I got fouled, and Nene got the rebound, and I was down by 1. So if Nene just goes up and puts the ball back in, I win. And this dude just missed the putback, and I was like, "You gotta be kidding!" Like, that's how it ends.
Oh, that was funny.
Speaking of endings, though, we got off on a bit of a tangent there. Speaking of endings, Dwayne Wade's illustrious basketball career. He's got 2 more games left tonight against Philadelphia, and then tomorrow night against Brooklyn. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about here. Dwayne Wade, one of the greatest shooting guards of all time, one of the best players of all time. He great person on and off the court, accomplished tons of stuff. So I got to ask you, I'll let you talk. What has Dwayne Wade meant to the game, and where does his career rank against the all-time great careers? What do you think?
Man, well, I'll answer the second part first. So you said all time. He's definitely he's a top 3 shooting guard of all time.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Michael Jordan,
Kobe and Wade. Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, you're not putting Paul Pierce ahead of him? Obviously, he's not even a shooting guard, but.
Well, and then when you ask what he meant to the game, so there's people, right? There's a lot of good players. There's a lot of good players. There's great players. There's Hall of Famers, but the very few are the people who are not only great, but they changed the game, right?
And changed franchises too.
And changed franchise. I mean I can sit here. I can name 100 great basketball players, in the past 40 years, right? But you can't name more than, I would say, maybe 10 people that actually changed the game.
Yep.
I mean, guys like LeBron, Steph, Michael, Chamberlain, Russell, Magic, Bird, like those are the guys who, and technically they're Hall of Famers, just like any other Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
But they were just a little bit different because they changed.
I mean, there's like there's Hall of Famers, and there's like guys who like transcended the game. You know what I mean?
I'm talking about they put basketball on the map.
Yeah.
Wade was one of those guys. I mean, creating the Euro step, literally made the Miami franchise. Made the Miami franchise. You could say like made Pat Riley. Pat Riley is a legendary figure.
I mean, the Heat weren't good before he got there, so that's
they weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even look at the back end of his career. Now it's his last season, and I don't think you can argue, but he's the best player on the roster.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously he's old and he doesn't have like the stamina, the endurance that the younger guys do, but like talent wise, he's definitely still the most talented player on that team.
Exactly. I mean, he was. He helped LeBron out when it comes to mobility. He helped mobility. He wasn't mobile himself necessarily, besides his endeavors in Chicago for a little bit, but he promoted that. And definitely his philanthropy, helping people. I just watched a really good tribute video of him helping out people. his donations. I mean, he's just one of the he's
just a good dude. Yeah,
a good guy, and man, I'm glad that he was in the NBA because the NBA gave him a platform to where he can, and the stuff he was doing, it was so genuine. It was so genuine.
He never came off as like a fake guy. You know what I mean? It seemed like everything he said, it seemed like it was like a real statement that like he meant. He wasn't just like doing it for the PR.
Exactly. I seen the video. I saw a video, and the caption was, and this was made a couple months ago. It goes, Dwayne Wade stays after. All his guys are. I can't remember. He was obviously at home, but I can't remember what. Or no, actually, he was away. He was playing at the away stadium for the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his last game there, so everyone there, regardless if you're rooting for the home team, but you're everyone's kind of a Wade fan.
Yeah.
You respect Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
So if you have his merchandise, you wanted to get it signed. What was his last time playing in that arena? Whichever arena it was, I should have looked it up. But
I remember seeing this video too. Yeah, I can't remember where it was.
All of his guys were already dressed, showered, out the door. He was still in his uniform, sweaty, signing. Made sure he signed every fan that had a Wade, because he said, well, this is my last, they can't see me, again, there's no, what I mean, like, I'm not coming back here. They have to come to Miami or come somewhere. So he stayed 2 or 3 hours after and to sign all. And that's one instance, but that just says who he is as a person.
Like, I mean, yeah, you look at like obviously that LeBron Heat's team when all like the things that Eric Gardner were happening with like police brutality and stuff. All those guys, they were the guys who were like making that movement within the NBA. And then like when the Stoneman Douglas shooting happened, Dwayne Wade was very vocal about those things. He went out. He made real efforts to help those students out. He put programs out. He put things for them to do after school to get their minds off the tragic events that happened. He invited them to games and stuff like that. I mean, he's been very in touch with his fans, and I feel like he doesn't have that presence of like losing his like touch with like common people. I feel like some people in the NBA, they become so great that they don't even seem like a real pro. And like the thing is, like as great as Michael Jordan was, and obviously some people will say he's the greatest player of all time. He's the popular pick to be the greatest player of all time. Him and LeBron probably. But Michael Jordan had that sense where he wasn't a real pro. Like I don't think you could call Michael Jordan like a person who related to the common person anymore. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. No. I said, and what I said, like if you shouted this out on my other podcast, what I said, and this was in our beginning stages. We were talking about Michael Jordan and LeBron, and we got into a segment of what LeBron and MJ off the floor. And I said it, and people, this is more than just one or two people, so this is a group of us, 3 or 4 of us on this podcast. And I said, I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm just going to take it a step further and just be real about this. Not beat around the bush. Not beat around the bush. Yeah. Beat around the bush. Michael Jordan as a basketball player is arguably the greatest of all time. Michael Jordan as a figure.
Oh yeah, no, he wasn't a role model.
Yeah, as a role model, which yes, Charlie Barkley said the commercial, I'm not your kid's role model. However, that is your job. Like you're on TV, you're doing the things that role models do. Kids look up to you.
I mean, regardless, yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like regardless of if you think you're a role model, people are gonna look up to you regardless. And I feel like you need to be conscious of that. Yeah, exactly.
And so what I said was Michael Jordan on the court is the greatest ever. Michael Jordan off the court failed. And I said that was basically it. I said he failed. And this isn't about Michael Jordan, this is about D Wade, but I'm just making the comparison that it's more than basketball. Once you get your money, once you get on your team, great, you're secure. Like that's the number one. You gotta help yourself before you help everybody else. Definitely. I mean, you can't be drowning and then try to help. I understand you got to take care of, but as soon as you're established, like Michael Jordan was, like LeBron was, like D Wade was, they started helping people. You got to Dwayne. Like you said, Dwayne Wade's at the high schools. He's putting on the camps.
Yep.
He's doing the grocery shopping. You know what I mean? And it's really great.
And I mean, yeah, all those things, like some of those things are overlooked. And I think there's something to be said too, because I feel like a lot of the things Wade does, they're not super publicized like what other athletes would do. Obviously, like they're still publicized, but I feel like there's something to be said too, where he's doing these things that he's not going out on like his own Instagram page or his own Twitter page talking about like, oh yeah, I did this, I did that for these people. Like Like there's other people posting about things he does, but he's not over there like talking about like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. He's letting these things, like he's doing these things out of his own heart. He's not doing it for some sort of sort of recognition and stuff like that. I feel like he understands. He's like, I get enough recognition as one of the best basketball players of all time, so I don't need any more good recognition. Like I'm just gonna do these things out of my own vision to just help people out. And I feel like that's what really sets him apart, because you look at both aspects of him. I mean, like we could talk about him as a basketball player for days. Like you just look at all his accolades, everything he's accomplished. He was a top tier basketball player in every book. If you think otherwise, obviously you're not a fan of the game, because you're just wrong. Obviously, opinions are opinions, but you're just wrong if you think otherwise about Dwayne Wade. But then if you look at his personal life too, like you were saying, like he succeeded on every kind of front that he really went forward to, and he's just a good person. So obviously he's gonna be missed. I don't know if I'm ready to watch his last game, to be honest. It'll be a
Oh man, I remember the first time. So I was living. It was my senior year of high school, of course. And I didn't play for League Pass. We didn't have cable because that's when like the Fire Stick was coming out, so you couldn't get local channels.
I get that Reddit.
Yeah, right. I went and I used my mom's card without her permission. I knew I was gonna get whooped. And I'm a senior in high school. Get fought by my dad. To watch. Obviously, I don't have to do this anymore. But to watch Kobe Bryant's last game, when I watched that, my eyes just were filled the whole game, because I was like, man, this is more than basketball. This is a legacy. This is a lot. You know.
It's what you grow up with. Like, you know what I mean? Like all your memories of watching basketball. That's what it's weird for me watching the NBA now. Like that you mentioned that. It's weird for me watching the NBA now, because like I didn't grow up with these guys. Like these guys are like, they're all like kind of newer players, and like we're really we're seeing the generation we grew up with, like they're old heads now. And it's weird because like I don't feel like I'm that old yet. Like I don't feel like I've been around for that long to where these guys are like retiring and stuff now. But like seeing Kobe leave, and like I'm sure you can attest, I was never a fan of Kobe. Like I always like rooted against the Lakers and stuff. Like when it was always like between LeBron and Kobe, I was like, oh, LeBron all the way. Like I had respect for Kobe, but I didn't like him. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I had respect for Kobe. And like you said, like watching him play his last game in historical fashion, for one. Yeah. But watching him play that last game, it was like you're watching like the end of an era. You're watching history. Like you're watching someone go from like physically doing something to the history book. You're like you're witnessing that transition where people are no longer going to be able to see this happen in person. And the only way they're going to be able to see it is through sports almanacs, history books, YouTube highlights, all that. Like that's how you're going to be able to watch Kobe from now on. So you're watching his transition from one medium to the other, and it's like, man, like it's sad. And I feel
and you can't watch those Kobe to this day. You can't watch those Kobe highlights and not get goosebumps.
No, you can't. That last game is insane. And I don't even. I wanted to. I mean, I wanted the Lakers to win that game, but every other Lakers game, I wanted them to lose. So I'm not a Kobe fan. I'm not a Kobe fan at all. But it was still like, man, like I had tears in my eyes. I was like, this is nuts. Like, and like Wade, when Wade retires, I'm gonna be really sad. I'm mad I didn't get to have like a proper Melo send off, because he's my favorite player, and he just kind of just left the league like unceremoniously. But Wade's last game, I'm gonna be watching that, eyes glued to the TV, and it's gonna be it'll be a tough moment, but it'll be like a beautiful moment. It'll be bittersweet, because you know he's reached the proper end of the road, and he's got everything that he's accomplished in his career, and he's made it to where he's got, and he's deserved to be at the end of the road. You know what I mean? So I'm happy for him.
Yeah, definitely. There was one more thing off the court, and it just recently happened. D-Wade, which I think may be one of his greatest, but as a black player, as a black male, in an aggressive, sport, really manly sport, him and his family supported his son, who was 11 or 12 years old, in the gay pride walk.
Oh, really?
Recently. Yeah.
Oh, I think I did see that. I think I didn't realize that was Wade's son, but I think I did see.
Yeah. I think his name is Zion. His son, either 11 or 12, came out to his parents and said, I'm attracted to boys. And D Wade being the great guy that we've been talking about the last 10, 12 minutes that
Mm-hmm.
we've been seeing the past,
13 years. No,
13,
more than that.
yeah,
16 years. 16 years. Came in
16
2003.
years in the NBA. His son said that. Well, he took it a step further and said, all right, well, if that's the case, then this whole family is going to a gay pride parade
Mm-hmm.
and we're marching. And I was like, man, and I can attest to this as a black male, and most of my family being black, they're very prideful when it comes to. A lot of my family members are very anti, and I'm not saying everybody's like this. I'm not going to generalize people.
Well, even in like a lot of like white communities too, like especially in like those like Christian white communities, like there's like that taboo, and like I think it means a lot for a father to be able to be like, you know what, I support my son, like regardless of like my son's sexual orientation or whatever doesn't affect the way that I see him. So I feel like it means a lot for Dwayne Wade to be able to come out and still show like support for his son. And I think that shows how there's no prejudice in that man's heart. He's just there, and he's going to support what's right. He's going to support what people love and how they act. And I think that means a lot. And it shows a lot about what kind of person Dwayne Wade is.
Yep. Yeah, it's really great. And I'm really, I mean, I like you said, it's a bittersweet, but I can't tune up. I'm definitely tuning in to watch this game.
Yeah. Tomorrow night it'll be. I think tonight's his last home game. Tomorrow night will be his last game in an NBA uniform. So it'll be. I'm sure I'll watch the game tonight too, because obviously that'll be his last game at American Airlines Stadium, and then after that, one more night of Dwayne Wade, and then it's off to the rafters.
Oh man,
yeah.
It's gonna be tough, but it's history.
Yeah, it is history, and that's something I'm happy for him. I'm applauding for him. Speaking of other good dudes, though, Kyle Korver, he penned an essay, I believe, at some point this weekend. I don't know the exact. It was the past like 2 or 3 days. He penned an essay, and it was touching up upon what his white privilege that he received. Like he understands the divide between black athletes and white athletes in the NBA and just generally in America, just people in the streets, just normal people. He's recognizing the separation between black and white America and the prejudice he faces. One way he touched up upon this is obviously Thabo. I don't know if you remember this incident, but Thabo Sefolosha, when he went to New York, he got his leg broken by the NYPD during an unlawful arrest, which he was exonerated from all charges that were against him. And Kyle Korver went and touched upon that and talk about the prejudice that the black African American athletes face in those kind of situations. And then he also went on to touch upon the more recent incident with Russell Westbrook and a Utah Jazz fan who was yelling racial slurs at him. And he went on to talk about how white Americans need to wake up and realize there is privilege, and it's not enough for white people to just say, "Oh, racism is bad. We need to stop racism," because obviously we can say that. And a big point that Korver makes in his article is saying that like white people can go and say all the right things, but the privilege that we have that's undisputable is white people can opt out of it whenever they want. Like you can say all the right things. You can say like, oh, like I support black people and stuff, but you can stop saying those things just as easily and nothing's going to happen to you. Like your life isn't going to change no matter if you're saying the right things or you're not saying anything at all. And he was basically, the point of his article or his essay was to point out that we as white people need to take a step back and allow African Americans to come forward, tell us what we want, what they want us to do, and for us to do those things, because obviously it's not our problem, it's their problem, and we need to be part of that solution. We can't just be stagnant, not doing anything, or being against it. We need to be actively helping. We need to have these conversations with, rather than other African Americans, rather than white people going up to African Americans and saying, "Oh, racism is bad. We should be trying to stop this stuff." We shouldn't be saying that to African Americans. We should be saying that to other white people so they understand that. That's the audience that we should be trying to reach. Like white people shouldn't be trying to reach African Americans. They should be trying to reach white people. So I just wanted to get your take. What did you make of this essay that he wrote?
The best part about it, and you made a lot of good points, but the best part about it, that I think, to me, the best point the best point he made, or not point he made, but the best thing about it
Mhm.
is that he said that he was accountable of himself
Yep.
at the get go.
I like
He
that a
didn't
lot.
say he wasn't preaching. Oh, this is that. We gotta start doing this. He said, okay, I'm about to tell you all this stuff, and I'm about to tell you how I messed up.
Mhm.
So you can. So maybe from my experience and in my head, since I'm a white male, another white male or female person of a non-black descent can see it from my perspective in my head, and he took full accountability. He said I was wrong, and he was like, and this is why I was wrong. This is how I felt, and that's wrong. And I love that the best because that's accountability. It's a lot. It's very easy for me to say. It's very easy for me to say, and this is fully hypothetical, but this is very easy for me to say, gay, gay, all people. Gay rights should be allowed. All people should be able to get married. Fight for this. Homophobia is wrong. All this stuff. It's harder for me to say, which you gain more credibility by, but it's hard for me to say, hey, I bully a gay guy.
Yeah,
that's hard because you don't want to admit that. Not saying that Corver said necessarily that, but it says
he spoke to his own prejudice, where he like you were saying, like I've like the Thabo incident. He was like, why was like his first thoughts weren't, is Thabo okay? Like what? Like is he gonna be all right? His first thoughts were, why was he out so late? Like he must have been doing something wrong if the police tried to arrest him. And I feel like it's no. What were you saying?
No, I was just gonna end by saying like, yeah, it speaks directly into the minds of white Americans. By I know. To me, it's saying I know this is somewhere in you.
Yeah.
And if it is, it's wrong, and you gotta fix it and provide ways, of fixing.
And I feel like he makes a good point too, because I feel like it highlights the problem. He also went on towards the end of the essay where he talked about the worst forms of racism that are plaguing us more than anything else aren't the blatant racists who come out and say these disgusting racist things openly. It's the racism that hides itself in plain sight. It's the kind of racism that's seeped itself into our institutions where we don't even notice it anymore. Or it's the type of racism where I feel like this is the problem with white America now is I feel like if you ask most white people, the vast majority of them will say, like, if you ask them, are you like racially prejudiced? The vast majority of them are going to say no. However, I feel like a lot of white people, they have this idea in their head where it's like it's not even like a conscious thought process. It's just when they see African Americans in the news getting arrested or stuff like that, it's constant like, well, obviously like they were doing something wrong to be arrested. Like they don't consider the fact that maybe those cops are racially prejudiced, maybe they are racially profiling them, and they don't give them like the fair shake that maybe they would give a white person. So I feel like he makes a really good point in highlighting that we need to take a step back and understand that, like, even if we don't think about it, even if we don't think we have it, we have to really take a step back and see ourselves from another person and understand, like, if this happened to me, would I be offended by it? You know what I mean? And I feel like he does a good job to point that all out. And I think I was kind of when I saw he wrote an article about that topic, I was kind of worried because I was like, oh, is this going to just be like another white guy saying like, oh, racism is bad? Because like anyone can say that, like, and I think he does a good job of highlighting, like, he's not just saying racism is bad. Anyone can say that, but that doesn't mean you're actually doing anything to help curve the problem, actually help the demographic that is being persecuted or is being unfairly treated. And I think he does a good job. I mean, it's not like he is going to change laws or anything with this article, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And one thing that I do think it might help with, and I don't know what you think about this, you can tell me what degree you agree with me on, but I think what way will help a lot is it might, because obviously we're at the age where we're like 20s, 24, 25, and there's a lot of young parents who are expecting kids, gonna have kids soon, who are kind of in our age range, like that early 20s, mid 20s. And if that article can get to some parents, maybe they can make efforts to raise their kids so they don't have these racial prejudices towards people, and they don't see people like that. They don't automatically assume certain things towards certain demographics. So I think it's a small step, but it's a well respected step, I feel like.
True. Yep. Agreed. Yeah, and I think I've always said the best way, because this is how we grew up. This is how me and you grew up.
Mhm.
The best way, and my kind of similar that I always hear people who speak foreign languages. I say, man, speaking foreign language, that's so hard. Like, what's the best way? How do you learn that? They say the best way is to, if you're speaking Spanish, go there. Go
Just
and
be
live
in that
there.
environment. Yep.
Be in that environment. And so the same thing when it comes to racism, the best way to combat it, live amongst them. How, like, me and you were military kids, so we had no choice. We had to have Hispanic, Black, white, Asian friends. Like, that's just how you.
And that's like, you make a great point there, because I was thinking about this the other day. Like, you think about our friends group, and not that any of like people listening would know any of the people we were friends with, but it was me, you, Jamarvin, Miles, Yo-Yo, Nick, Quadrell, like all like, and it was like we never like picked our friends because of our ethnicities or anything like that. We just like, we are like, all of our personalities, they meshed really well, and like that's why we hung out together. And it is like, I feel like you can be good friends with anyone from any type of race. Like that shouldn't be any part of it.
Yeah.
So
But if you grow up in not necessarily a small town, but a community
Where
that's
they-
only one race, and you just create these prejudices, which in the long run makes you pass it on to other people and will never get you over that hill of being able to engage with somebody different than you.
yeah, and I think that is part of the problem with America, where everyone's so separated in their own communities, where they don't have the opportunity to really put themselves in another person's shoes, or just like encounter people who are different than them and realize like, oh, you know what? I thought this person was different from me, but now that I've spent some time with them, I've talked to them, I've got to know them, they're actually the same. Like, we have really similar personalities, we have the same interests, we have the same values. We're compatible, we like hanging out together. And I feel like if we just took all these communities who are like one demographic and we just mixed all them together, I feel like people would really get to understand another person's story, and like why they are how they are, and how people aren't that different after all. So I don't know. I like the article.
I did. I love the article. I think it's great, and I saw he got a lot of support back, especially from other NBA players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. That actually is gonna be about all our time, though. I enjoyed ending up on a kind of two good feel good stories: Dwayne Wade, obviously, and obviously Kyle Korver's essay. Thanks for being back on, Jordan. Enjoyed having you on. We'll be back next week as well on Tuesday night, 6 o'clock as always. So hope to see you guys there, and thank you for tuning in. Peace.